I would like to say you're never too old to learn something new. So even though I've been doing this for like almost 15 years now, I'm also very aware that you can get stuck in this rut of familiarity. So I've always done it this way, and so it should always be that way. While there's comfort in doing things over and over again and getting results, there's also the danger of not evolving and learning new approaches. Now to be that person who just simplifies project management for you, makes see, it's as easy as what you do every day. But I'm not oversimplifying it at the same time. Let's work.
Welcome to Career Conversations with Ola, the official podcast of Career Zone by Ola. I am your host, Ola Adediji, a human resource professional, career enthusiast, and a coach. Your go-to guide through the highs, lows, and everything in between of building a meaningful career. In each episode, I sit down with incredible professionals, trailblazers, go-getters, and everyday leaders to share real stories, practical advice, and lessons you can actually use. Whether you're just starting out, pivoting, or chasing your next big goal, the space is here to inspire and empower you. Join me and let's navigate the world of work together. Hello everyone, and welcome to Career Conversations with Ola, where we share stories that help you level up your career. If you're new here, my name is Ola. I'm a human resource professional, and I like to say career enthusiast who believes that sharing our stories is one of the most powerful ways to inspire and empower others. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to someone whose career, in my opinion, has been nothing short of inspiring. Her name is Fisayo Folarin. Fisayo, I am so excited to have you here. It's one of the newer episodes. It's a new year. It's 2025. I can't wait to hear your story. But I thought to do a quick intro of Fisayo before we get into the main gist. Fisayo is an extraordinary senior project manager, scrum master, and I would say a transformational leader in her own right. She's come with over a decade of experience driving impactful projects in tech, in banking, and beyond. Fisayo has done it all, from digital banking transformations for organizations in the financial services sector to managing teams from a project management standpoint. But what truly stands out about Fisayo is not just her accomplishment, but her heart for the people. So I'll take a pause right now to say, if you're interested in anything project management, if you're looking to pivot or start a career in project management, and you don't follow Fisayo Folarin already on LinkedIn, I don't know what you're doing. So go to LinkedIn now and, give her a follow. Fisayo also is into coaching for younger folks or, newer professionals who are wanting to pivot into project management. So you should definitely connect with her, get a coaching session from her. She is awesome. Fisayo has a collaborative leadership style. I have known her for a few years, and I can tell you this for free. She has a deep passion for what she does. She has a deep passion for turning big ideas into meaningful actions. She's someone that doesn't just adapt to change, but she leads it. In today's conversation, we will get to hear the real story behind her journey, the wins, the challenges, and the lessons she's learned along the way. Fisayo, once again, I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for making time out for this. But before we dive into, your incredible career journey, I thought to do a quick icebreaker. What's the one moment from your recent career or personal life that has made you smile, laugh, or just feel grateful?
Well, that's interesting. And thank you for having me. And such a great introduction. Well, I was listening to it and I was like, who is that person? Thank you for the nice introduction and the kind words. That's your question. So what's one thing that made me laugh recently? I think I would say, let's see. You should have warned me. You should have warned me about this question. So that I would have prepared. What's one thing that has made me laugh recently?
Laugh, or smile, or just feel grateful?
Or feel grateful. In fact, I'm going to lean more into grateful. Because this one is something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. There are some opportunities that I've pursued in the past. And at the point when I was checking for those opportunities, it seemed like that was the best thing that could ever happen to me. And when I was taking stock of the end of 2024, just looking back and seeing how far I have come from those opportunities, I look back and I'm like, wow, maybe those opportunities were not for me. I'll say even the other side of things. I used to work at a company that I thought was my dream job. It was the right technology. I was learning so many things every day. And I thought, oh, there could be nothing better than this. And on the plus side, it paid really well. But you know, when your dream job doesn't love you, sometimes you have to make a decision for yourself. And that's what I did. I made a decision for myself to step out into the unknown. And you know what? I've done it for over a year now, and I have no regrets.
Talk about stepping out into the unknown. I feel like we sometimes, as we go through our career phases, we get in that space. And I'd rather step into the unknown, knowing rather than staying back in a room where I don't feel comfortable. So I hear you on that. Super grateful for the ability to be able to make some of those decisions, because I don't believe everyone can do that. So
that's true. Yeah.
That was such a good way to start this, to kick it off. But I always like to get behind the scene. Let's get to how project management started for you. What is the story behind this journey? Did you, complete your education and say to yourself, oh, I'm stepping into project management? I don't believe everybody even knew about project management. I mean, not until the recent times. Knew so much about it. Like, how did you get into this field? How did you land yourself in the project management space, and now you've become a voice to reckon with? I would really love to hear, the stories behind the scene.
Yeah, so my story is, I like to describe it as something that is quite an organic and non-traditional story. And why I say this is because I started out with a background in banking. So funny thing, I studied banking and finance, and coming out of college, one of my goals was to secure a job in a bank, right? And thankfully, I got a good grade. So ideally, back in Nigeria, when you come out with a good grade like that, there are just some types of jobs that you automatically would apply for, like with banks, sometimes with all companies, depending on the situation. So my goal was to get a job in a bank and then follow my career from there, right? And I got the opportunity to start out in the customer service of the bank. Fortunately for me, I was one of the first set of people who were going to work in the contact center. So what that meant was that I got the opportunity to start from the ground up, with setting up all the processes, setting up all the procedures, documenting some of the standard operating processes as well, testing out different technology that was being introduced to the contact center. And that was a good learning opportunity. The other side of it was also that I got to work with the project team that set up the contact center. And I think that was where my curiosity about project management first started. I was like, okay, who are these great people who their job is to set up things from scratch and then move on to something else? And one thing about me is that I like to think of myself as a little restless. And what that means is I'm a curious person. I like to try new things. And so I knew from the get-go that a monotonous role or a role that required monotonous routine tasks were just not for me. Not like there's anything wrong with routine tasks. I just knew very early on that routine tasks would be the death of me. So I was looking for something that was going to give me that flexibility and opportunity to try new things and continue to explore the boundaries of what I'm learning and the types of topics I learned. So getting to meet that team was the first Kickstarter for me. I was at the contact center for about 2 years, and the regular term for a contact center employee was also supposed to be 2 years. So just when my term was wrapping up, there was an opportunity in the project team, and I applied, and the rest is history. So that's in a nutshell what my experience was like. It was more organic because it was growth within the same company, but I also from the very beginning knew that I was going to end up doing something that was not routine.
Okay, talk about getting restless. I can say I can totally relate to that. I am someone who likes to, do something, a mix of things versus just the routine type tasks. So I can totally relate. But after I've had your story, I'm curious. You've been in this space for quite a chunk of years, over a decade. And I'm asking myself, was there a moment, and you've led quite incredible projects. I mean, some I'm privy to, just having an idea. And I'm curious to know, was there any point where in your career you said to yourself, yes, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing? Can you, share us on something that made it look like, yes, this is light bulb, this is where I should be?
I think there were like 3 moments for me that defined what I'm supposed to be doing. So I've talked about how I got into project management. And even at that time, it was really more about getting a place to go after my term at the contact center ended. So it wasn't like I was really clear on project management as the way. I just knew it was an avenue to try something I wanted to do. And then my very first project, I was working with a more senior project manager, and the role was the optimization of a centralized processing center. So We already had a centralized processing center where there was account management happening, account opening, check management for the bank, but they were slow processes. So the goal of that project was to see how we could optimize the process, reduce the turnaround times for some of those processes as well. And of course, that involved reviewing large data sets, right? And then I'll sit down and watch this project manager pull up an Excel spreadsheet and just do some things that I thought were magic and get the results. And I'm like, how many years will it take me to be able to do something as cool as that, right? And because, like I said, I'm a curious person, and part of that curiosity is that if I'm interested in something, I'm going to find out everything I can about that thing and learn about it. So for sure, that was one of the first markers that confirmed that, okay, I'm on the right track, because it's going to fuel my curiosity. It's going to give me a challenge, because I love a good challenge. The second time when I actually thought, okay, this is the right career, was I got an opportunity. Again, the first company I worked at, I was there for almost 10 years. That's another story for another day, but I was there for like almost 10 years. And in those 10 years, I had the opportunity to work on different projects. And because I was working in the head office, working very close to where decisions were being made, it was really exciting to see some of the strategic direction of how the strategy cycle of the bank got set and how my role keyed into delivering the strategy. So the second part of it was, so at some point in the bank, I think around my 7th year or so, they introduced a management training program, which was supposed to be an incubator for middle management. So if you've been in the bank for X number of years and you have a master's degree and there are a few things that met the criteria. Thankfully, I met that criteria. You qualify for that program, and automatically, once you're done with the program, it was meant to be a 2-year program, you go straight into like an assistant manager role, which in banking then was quite a senior middle management role. And so the opportunity to qualify for it, I think one of the things that prepared me to qualify for that role was my project management experience. I was working on different projects. I gotten to understand the strategy of the bank and also gotten my master's along the way. And so I just naturally qualified for the role, and it was an enlightening experience. Even though I didn't complete the role, I didn't complete the program because I moved to Canada. But that was my second marker to say, okay, I'm on the right track, because this prepared me to do this management program. And then the third marker was when I moved to Canada. I started out as a project manager. And while we like to say, project management is the same across all countries, there are a few things that are quite different. And the stark differences showed up immediately I started working in Canada, like the way you manage stakeholders, the way departments are structured, and then the way you communicate. Those are the 3 things that I really noticed were really different. And again, piquing my curiosity and the challenge of having to establish myself as a professional here again, being able to lead projects successfully was another challenge that again was a ticker for me to say, okay, I could do this. One of the things that I think also helped me was I got a coach. And when I first got to Canada, I did struggle, and we probably might talk about that a little more as we go on with this. But I struggled a bit because, like I said, those 3 things, managing stakeholders, communications being different, company structure being different. It was a bit of a learning curve for me. So one of the things I did for myself was to get a career coach who helped me navigate some of the mindsets that I needed to shift to be able to be successful in my role. And one of the things I did in that career coaching program was to write a letter to myself from 20 years ahead to say, okay, if you're looking back as a professional 20 years from now, what would you tell yourself? And that letter, I think it did a lot in shifting my mindset. It's called the power of reframing, because whatever it is that I was experiencing at that point in time that was making me uncomfortable, it started to look really small compared to what was possible 20 years from now. So again, those were my 3 markers. When I started, when I moved into the management program, and of course, getting a coach and having that mindset shift really helped.
So many points, so many lessons to take out of all that you said. But I'll dwell more towards the end. Writing a letter to yourself. I did something similar for my 2020 reflection. And I actually have it on my LinkedIn, interestingly. And so this was me just reflecting on my 2024 experience and then saying to myself, these are the key things that would matter to me in 2025. I call it the letter to my future self, 2025 version. I totally having been through coaching, having done some coaching myself, I totally understand the power of reframing and just, casting those big things and starting to look at them like really tiny milestones, and you get by day. And I'm sure in 20 years from now, you see yourself and you'd say, I did it. Like you would literally, be able to say to yourself, I did it. This is so interesting. I mean, you and I talk every now and again, but it's so good to hear some of this, these different sides to you. So this is really enlightening and inspiring. And I'm sure someone out there is listening and picking on lessons and things that they could do for themselves. Just moving on to my next question and my area of curiosity. Like, you've told us the fancy stuff, but I believe that every career, everyone has a challenge they may have faced at some point. Share us, one moment where you had a challenging career moment, and what was that challenge? But ultimately, what was it that helped you go past it? How did you survive that challenging moment?
Does it have to be one? Because I feel like there's how much time do you have? So many, like I said, there are a few markers, right, that define or more confirm that you're on the right track. And for me, I've had a few of those along the line. And some of those markers come with the challenges that define that moment for me, right? So if I had to pick one, I'll say the one that still comes to mind a lot would be, there are a few of them. Which one should I pick? Is it when I first started out in Canada or when I decided to branch out into the unknown? There's so many, but if I had to narrow it down, say, okay, the one I'll look at would be, and one I think a lot of us can relate to, when I moved from Nigeria to Canada. So the funny thing is I'd already been managing projects for 7 years at the time when I got to Canada in different capacities. So I started out as a project analyst, became a project associate, a senior project associate, which is an equivalent of a project manager. And at some point I was even managing a PMO, right? So I had done all of those great things, but because I was moving to a new country, so new culture, new way of doing things, new way of communicating, it was a huge challenge for me. And I dare say, because the company I worked at was a great company, gave me an opportunity to again explore doing what I love doing in a different context, right? But then again, they also came with its own growing pains because, like I said, one of the biggest things was managing stakeholders. So here I am in a new country, right? And one thing I always see, this one is really funny, is even though I had been watching a lot of American movies and had been hearing people speak this Canadian accent or American accent on TV, it's a different ball game when you have to now sit down with people and work with people who speak in that accent. And one of the feedback items I got was, oh, you speak too fast, or people can't hear you because you're mumbling your words. One of the other things I heard was, I'm too agreeable. And so those are the things that signaled okay, a culture shift here, because I'm used to doing things one way, but now I'm in a new environment and context has to switch, right? And it was one of the reasons why I got a coach to help me again understand how to translate the great things about me. And one of the things I went through with that coach was identifying my superpowers, is what we call them. So I went through some psychological tests where they define what your strengths are. I think the test I took was called the Clifton test or something. And that test, what it did was that it helped me to identify what I do best and things I could improve on. And the goal was to focus on your strengths, because what's your weakness is your weakness. If you spend 80% of your time trying to improve your weakness, maybe you will just improve it by 5%, is what research says, right? But if you lean into your strengths, you're able to lead with what you do best. And that's how I was able to identify that collaboration is a key thing for me. I love to communicate. So problem solving is something I naturally lean into. So when I'm trying to solve a problem, I try to find out why, try to find out the root cause, and then work from there to collaborate with stakeholders. And so just knowing those two areas about myself kind of helped me reframe who I am as a professional in this new environment. And then again, the coach was somebody who had been in Canada for over 20 years. So they had walked the walk. They had also experienced a similar journey because they also migrated to Canada from another country. And I must say that it wasn't free. It was an investment. I paid good money to have this coach walk me through, but it's one of the best investments I made to overcome that challenge.
Two things I picked here: get yourself a coach, know thyself, and lean into your strengths. Those are really big and heavy pieces. And I have always talked about the power in mentorship, the power in getting, up the journey with someone who has walked it before. They know it better. They know where the pain points are. They know, the sort of things to tell you as you go on every now and again. So absolutely lean into a coach. I feel like that is a really powerful tool. Thank you for that.
And you know what? One more thing I did want to add was that I think one of the most defining things about working with that coach was apart from the fact that, of course, helped me understand what my superpowers were, I noticed a shift in myself after that program, because before then, I always thought if I don't speak well in a meeting, they will fire me. If I don't send this email on time, I'll lose my job. Where do I start? I haven't built a reputation in this country. If you get fired from your first job, I've been hearing that, oh, it will be difficult for you to get the second job. And then I was working in a small city. So in a small city where you're like 3 degrees of separation from anyone, one of the fears was if you get fired from one company, this news is going to spread around and nobody's going to yeah. So one of the major shifts that happened was, again, that reframing we talked about, writing a letter to yourself. Just help me know whatever it is you're going through right now, it's not as big as you think it is. Yes, at that point in time, we have to give it its flowers. It's important. It's important enough to be something that is maybe stealing your peace at that point in time, but it's not necessarily, at least in most times, it's not as big as what you think it is in that moment. So just being able to reframe by looking a few days ahead and saying, okay, how would you feel in 5 minutes? How would you feel in 5 years? How would you feel about this in 50 years? Really helped me to overcome that constant anxiety and fear I was dealing with. Yeah.
Such powerful words. Thank you for that. And I'm curious, in your line of job, just based off what I know, there's a lot of ambiguity, especially when you're kicking off a project. That's also a lot of complexities that get built into what you do. But then at the end of the day, there's like your schedule that you have to follow. There's your time that you must, deliver on the project. With all of these complexities, how do you keep your teams motivated to delivering on what needs to be delivered on? How do you keep the team on track? What's your superpower? What's like that thing you bring out of your secret toolbox every time you're on an ambiguous project or there's complexity coming up?
I like to joke and say, project managers are in the business of managing chaos. Like, if there was no chaos, then we would not have a job.
You wouldn't have a job.
What's the purpose of having a project manager if everything is already queued up and everybody knows what to do, right? And that's the beauty in being a project manager. Just being able to start out with lots of unknowns, and then at the end of the project, you're looking back and there's just all this knowledge, all of this learning that has happened along the way. Of course, mistakes as well, have found a way to adapt and then deliver. So for me, what I do very early on is, and I think I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn as well, is ensuring that I create clarity within my teams. Beyond being friendly, beyond being approachable, I think being able to create clarity is important. What do I mean by clarity? At the beginning of any project, many people, there are so many unknowns. So many times, maybe you understand the goal of the project. For example, I'll say, if I'm on a project where the goal is to migrate from one cloud to another cloud technology, we know that that's the end goal. But there's still so many unknowns. For example, are we doing a lift and shift? So a lift and shift is we're just moving everything as is from one platform to the other. Or are there supposed to be some customizations that we're going to take advantage of in this new platform that need to be added onto the project? What are the data dependencies? What are the network dependencies? All of those things come into play. And unfortunately, you probably don't know a lot of those things. I'll give an example of a recent cloud migration I was part of. One of the biggest issues we had was figuring out all the connectivity rules that needed to be in place to make sure that we could connect to the new platform. And even though we had technical experts on the team, even they didn't know so much. So along the line, of course, we found out a few dependencies that needed to be resolved. And as we found out those dependencies, it was baked into the project. So going back to what the superpower is for me, I would say is creating clarity. So very early on in any project, I like to do something that I call defining the ways of working. And part of defining the ways of working is defining how we're going to communicate, number one. So what are the collaboration spaces going to be? How are we going to talk? And would it be Teams? Would it be Slack? Whatever it is that is the communication tool for the company. How are we going to share documents? That's the second very important one. How are we going to share documents in the sense of when we meet, where the meeting minutes going to go? Whatever documents are created for the project, where should they go? So I typically like to set up like a SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever it is you use in the company, where we start to collaborate very quickly, because you want to avoid people keeping documents on their personal drives. Getting history of projects get lost if you don't address that very, very early on. And the third thing is addressing cadence of meeting. So how often are we going to meet? For newer projects, I'd like to keep it simple so you don't overwhelm people. So we'll probably meet once a week. And then, of course, I'm very good at just pausing people here and there. Oh, hey, let's talk about this. You have 5 minutes for this one. because ensuring clarity very early on, I think it trickles down into every other aspect, stakeholder management, budget management, you name it, making sure that everybody is clear. And what I always like to do is to make sure that my projects are clear, or my project team members are clear on where we are at every point in time. So every week I'm like, okay, this week, this is what we're going to deliver. This is what is expected. These are the challenges we're working to unblock, and everybody's clear on where we are. It's one of the things I think I do the best on projects. Just make sure if you're on my project, you're not wondering what you're supposed to be doing. Clear on what you're supposed to do in per time. And of course, everything else follows it, being able to be friendly, personable, make sure that I'm treating people as people, because that's the other part of it. There's ensuring clarity, and there's also being aware that we're in the people management business. As much as I want to hit deadlines and I want to be able to stay on that budget or whatnot, things will happen because we're working with people. So people with people.
And dealing with humans, it's important.
Exactly. So just being able to understand that beyond just deliverables, I'm working with people and making sure that I cater to the people side of things by getting to know my team a bit more and giving allowance for the fact that things happen and it's not the end of the world. Just making sure that we build that cohesiveness and collaboration and safety as a team. Very important.
Oh, that was loaded. But pretty much what I caught from that is if project management, and I wouldn't even say project management alone, clarity should always be a watchword for anyone if you're going to focus on results. And clarity has to start from day one. That's all I hear you say. That's like such big tip to help. And I think that even if you're not in project management space, that's like a really good thing to always apply. So it's clear one thing. We're a couple of minutes into this conversation, but one thing is clear, Fisayo. You are super big on learning and evolving. If I didn't know you one-on-one, I am able to say that just by the amount of stuff you have shared with us already today. And so my question for you is, how would you say continuous learning has shaped your career and you as a person? And if you were going to, tell someone who was younger or your younger self how important continuous learning was, what would you say to that younger version of yourself? How has continuous learning brought you this far?
You know that popular thing about how if you don't evolve, change is the only constant thing, right? So if you don't evolve, you become stagnant and then you become obsolete pretty much, right? So I think that constant learning is something that everybody has to adopt. And I always like to say, again, I know I'm throwing out all the cliches here. I always like to say, you're never too old to learn something new. So even though I've been doing this for almost 15 years now, I'm also very aware that there are some things that it's because that's how we've always done it. And you can get stuck in this rut of familiarity. So I've always done it this way, and so it should always be that way. And while there's comfort in doing things over and over again and getting results, there's also the danger of not evolving and learning new approaches because approaches change. That's why even the popular bodies who oversee project management, like PMI, things are changing every time, every year, or every couple of years, they release a new version of the PM body of knowledge, right? And when I say PMI, I'm talking about Project Management Institute, the most recognized body that manages project management certifications, right? And more recently, the one that even caused a storm online recently was that they partnered with Agile Alliance, right? And then they're going to offer some new courses that maybe I believe would cater to like a hybrid way of working. That just shows you that even in the whole scheme of things, even in the industry, change is something that is happening. Then you can imagine as a person, you now decide, oh, I did this certification 10 years ago. I'm already certified. So that I don't think that would be in your best interest because change is the only thing that is constant. The ways of doing things evolve over time. And so personally, how I apply that is, I talked about curiosity earlier, right? Like if I'm interested in something, I'm going to do everything. And I'm telling you, I'm that kind of person. I even go into almost obsessive territory to figure out everything I can.
Just continue.
To figure out everything I can about that topic. And so for my career, like I mentioned about the challenges I had moving into Canada. So some of the actions that I had already talked about taking is about that curiosity of saying, okay, I'm having this challenge. How do I fix it? So for me, I'm primarily a problem solver. And so that problem solving goes into fueling my curiosity and has also fueled my ability to continue to learn. And one thing I've been doing lately has been to deepen my technical roots because like I mentioned, I come from a non-traditional IT background. I studied banking. And because I'm leading a lot of projects in the IT space, one of the things I've done over the years is to continue to improve my understanding of the ways of doing things in an IT space. So I've done a few certifications here and there to cover up my knowledge gaps. And I still have a few more that I plan to complete, because when you show up in the room with technical teams, you need to be able to inspire confidence that you understand what they're saying. Even if you don't, I'm not trying to be a subject matter expert, but at least I want to be able to lead those conversations and help the team, because I feel like the only way I can help somebody is if I know what they're doing. So that's just an example of how I approach my learning journey. So advice to anybody who is just starting out, I would say, so this one is a catch-22. I'm also one of those people who says going to get all the certifications in the world is not necessarily the best thing to do. Learning is not only about certification. I think I've talked about this very recently as well, that you learn by listening, you learn by watching, you also learn the best by doing. And so my advice is always, if you can find a way to start to do this thing you're trying to learn, I think that's the best way to do it. And then, of course, taking those certifications like I'm doing right now is, again, a way to bridge the knowledge gaps that you might still see. Because, you see, you keep growing. I started out as a project associate. Now, my title varies from senior project manager to scrum master and whatnot, right? And, of course, for each new role, there's always maybe something I need to learn or a new technology I need to get familiar with. And my learning journey is just to make sure that I'm bridging those gaps and able to bring values to whichever teams I'm working.
Keep learning. Don't hold yourself back. There's so much that you can get at the end of it. Thank you, for sharing that. I'm an astute advocate for just continuing to learn and evolve, because again, the world is not waiting for you. The world of work, as we even see it now, it's like insanely fast. So you have to keep learning to catch up. So for sure, I do agree. No, I'm shifting focus a bit to more, let's help guide the next generation of project managers, of professionals. One of the reasons why I started this was, how can we leverage people's story? How can we leverage other people's journey as a way to tap others on the shoulder to say, hey, if this person did it, you could do it as well. So if you could say to your younger self who had not figured out what life would become, if you went back 10, 15 years ago and you wanted to give your younger self a career advice, maybe a couple, let me not limit it to one. If you wanted to give your younger self a career advice, what would you be saying to her today?
I think that's a really good one. Really, really good one, because you know what? Nobody really, at least for me, I'll talk about my own story. I didn't start out with the end goal in mind. And I know this sounds very off what you typically hear in mainstream when they're like, start with the end goal in mind, write the goal, break it down, and take daily steps to get there. I'm not saying that that's not, and I'm not saying that's not a good approach. I think it's a universally accepted approach to always have a plan, right? But for me, if I were to advise my younger self, I'll say it's about building systems rather than hitting targets. And why I say that is what I've learned over time, the sum total of our daily habits. And one of the things I probably have spoken about throughout this conversation has been my curiosity, has been how that curiosity has fueled my problem solving and pretty much fueled most of the steps I've taken to be able to do all the wonderful things that I've had the opportunity to do over time. So I'll say building systems are important. So when I say building systems, I'm saying one of the things that helped me, I'll say, for example, at the beginning when I was starting out and I just fresh from college looking for my first opportunity, I knew a few things that I wanted and a few things I didn't want. But I didn't know which job I was looking for. I just knew what I wanted and what I didn't want, right? I knew I didn't want to do something that was routine. I knew from conversations I'd had with people that I didn't want to be in a field sales role, not because there's anything wrong with it, but it just wasn't something that I knew would fit with my personality. The way I am right from even my college days, I'd always been somebody who was involved in planning and organizing different things. So I was on the planning team for some of the organizations I was in school. I rose up to some of those leadership roles just because, again, I'm that person they will call to plan, organize an event, plan, organize. I was part of the planning team for my yearbook, for our class yearbook, for example. So I'd always known that something along the line of planning was going to be for me, but I also didn't want to do anything routine. The other thing I also knew was that I wanted to be close to where decisions were going to be made. And that decision came from speaking with people. So when I was job hunting, I met a bunch of people. And thankfully, one of the people I met got a job before I did. And he was explaining to me how when he went to the training school he fought really hard to be one of the top students because he was one of the top 3 that finished well in the training school. And because of that, they took him to the head office, which meant he didn't have to work at a branch, which meant he was closer to where decisions were being made. And so I was like, okay, whatever job I get, I'm going to make sure that I'm in the top because I need to go to the head office. So like I said, sometimes you don't see the whole end goal in mind. So if I advise myself, I would say, but you need to identify what you want and what you don't want, because that will be a guiding, it will form the foundation for the guidelines for how you navigate. So for me, that was it. I knew what I wanted, I knew what I didn't want, and so that kind of guided every action and every step that I took. And then along with that, having short-term horizon plans like, okay, this year I want to do this certification, or in the next 2 years I want to do this. So combining those two helped me build the systems I needed to, which is like, maybe, okay, I'm going to read 5 minutes a day. I'm going to connect with X and Y amount of people a day. And then, of course, those are like the small steps that add up to the results that you see. And if you see anybody who has been successful at anything, because I've been listening to stories of people who have built great things. It's one common denominator I hear is that most of their success did not come by chance. It's based on the small daily steps that they took. And so, advice to younger self, figure out what you want, what you don't want. Create systems and structures that can get you to what you want. Because success is not in one day. It's about all those small daily steps.
Or that's so insightful. Thank you. Like I like how you wrapped it all up. Like, figure what you want. You need to start from at least some known point, and then start to build systems and structures to help you get there. So powerful. Thank you so much, Fisayo. I do have pretty much a similar type question, but now looking at, if somebody was to approach you, hey, I'm a fresh graduate, I'm trying to get into project management, or I'm a seasoned professional and I want to pivot. I mean, something else, I want to pivot into project management. How would you guide them? What would you be saying to them?
I'll start with the seasoned professional, because, what would apply to a seasoned professional might not necessarily be what a fresh graduate will need. For a seasoned professional who is trying to transition into project management, one thing that I've come to understand, or at least realize over time, is that many of us do some aspects of project management in our roles without necessarily knowing it. So I've seen a lot of stories of people, or at least I've been part of stories of people who maybe transitioned from being teachers into project management, or transitioned from being administrative staff into project management. I've even seen stories of people who moved from like the medical field into project management. And this just goes to show that as long as, so I say, in everyday life, there's some bit of project management. So if you've ever planned a party before, if you've ever planned a relocation from one country to another, if you've ever planned an engagement or even a wedding, then you've done project management to a degree. You just probably are not aware of it. I always say, for experienced professionals, the best advice is to start where you are. And also, this is practical experience. The reason why I say that is, let's say, for example, I'll use myself as an example. I started out in customer service in a bank, right? And because I got the opportunity to make contacts within the bank, establish myself as a professional that people wanted to work with, make friends, got to know more about the bank, it was sort of easier for me to explore opportunities within the same bank. When there was an opportunity for a project manager, project associate, I applied for it, and it was easier for me to get that job. Versus somebody who is just trying to transition into project management, applying from outside. Now, the advantage of starting where you are is that they already know you. You probably already have the right contact. So there's no, who is this person? What's their behavior like? Would they be a good fit? All of that is not a challenge. At that point in time, it's just about, okay, whether there's an opportunity within the company and whether you're able to speak to some of the knowledge of that new role that you've already started applying in your current role. So I always believe in starting where you are. And starting where you are, again, also means that, like I mentioned before, most of us are doing project management in our daily roles, but we're not aware of it. So starting where you are also means, okay, taking stock. What do I do right now as whatever, let's say as maybe a cashier in the bank? How does being a cashier and all those things that I do, how does it translate into project management? So you need to also do some of the foundational learning, find out about project management. There are some certifications you can take. I think they are low cost or no cost. You can take a course on Udemy. You can do this Google project management certification. I believe there are some of them. There are places where you can get it for free. Take those certifications as a start, not because you're trying to just say, oh, I've done the certification, now I can be a project manager. No, it's more along the lines of learning, and then you're able to sit down and say, okay, this is what I do as a cashier, or this is what I do as a teacher, and this is what is expected in project management. Doing that assessment to see what are the things that are the intersections here, what are the transferable skills, and then start to apply those skills in your current role. Because what the knowledge of project management does is that it helps you to elevate how you've been doing things. So for example, if you've just been doing your planning haphazard, you didn't know that you were planning, but you just know, okay, I always write out everything I want to do every week, and I always make sure I get my team to do it. Now with project management, you have the idea of putting together a schedule, of identifying dependencies, making sure that there are start dates and end dates for everything that you're working on. And then you can elevate your work, because that way you start to build a portfolio of things you've done. Other ways to volunteer within your current role. For example, it's always the simplest thing, and I always say almost every team I've been on always has a problem with documentation. I don't know why, but it's almost everywhere I've ever worked. Documentation is never 100%. So you can volunteer to be the documentation police on your team. Create a structure for how documents should be stored, making sure that people are documenting processes, procedures, making sure that they are stored in a way that is easily accessible. Because one thing to store things, another thing to be able to retrieve the information. And by the time you're able to implement all of that, get the proper collaboration spaces for storing that information, you've implemented an IT project. Now, you can also do some research, find out if maybe whatever collaboration stores you have right now are not efficient. Do research on what other platforms are out there that can help you improve efficiency. Recommend to management. Of course, you'll be one of the first people that will want to recommend that, or like put yourself for that person that can lead that as a project. Before you know it, you already finished your first project, and then you continue to build from there. Again, I'm a big proponent of starting where you are. And organizations are always looking for people who can take initiative. If you can solve a problem at the guy, and then the other thing I've noticed is if you're the person who adopts technology the fastest. For example, they upgrade you from the one that happened recently that I noticed, okay, upgrade you from one task tracking tool. Let's say probably you were using Excel sheets, and then they introduce Jira to you for tracking tasks. And then you're one of the first adopters. You understand how it works. You're able to implement and, organize your work. And then you're like, okay, I'm volunteering as a champion. That way, you begin to establish yourself as a go-getter, as a doer. And that's really what project managers are. You're somebody who can help people get things done. Those are like 2 examples of how you can start where you are, build your portfolio. I know this is going long, but that's like for someone who is transitioning. Now, for a new graduate, I believe that that's a whole different ball game entirely. And the reason is because project management is something, because you're managing that management in it means that you're actually influencing how people work. And so there has to be some degree of experience behind it. I always encourage people who are just starting out, like fresh from college, to get a job, any job. You need that experience of working with people, influencing people's decisions, either as a project associate, if you're fortunate to get something like that, or whatever role. Because like I mentioned before, for the person who is transitioning, there's project management in your daily tasks as well. So you're better off starting something, might not be related to project management, but you're going to learn a lot of skills that you can translate into project management. Now, if you're fortunate to find like an internship or like a project associate role, then you go straight to it. But if you're not, then you can get something else that's alternative, like customer service. There's so much you can learn in project management, or an administrative role. You can start there, build up from there, do all of the learning that you need to do. And then there's this course that PMI offers for people who have fewer than 3 years of experience in project management. In fact, you don't even have to have any experience in project management. CAPM, so it's the Certified Associate Project Management course, where you learn the foundations of project management. And you can begin to apply those foundational principles to your current role, and then that brings you to that transitioning person who transitions from a role to the other. So again, there's a path to follow. It's just, I always say it's not a sprint. It's usually a marathon, but definitely doable.
Well, in summary, start from where you are, start with what you have, and keep building from there. Thank you so much. It's been such loaded session. I have the last 2 things while we wrap up. Okay. I have come to personally understand the power of personal branding. And I feel like a lot of folks don't understand how much power is in personal branding and networking. I know that, from the way I see you show up, you were very conscious of your personal brand. How has that shaped your career? And if you were to give a tip or two to someone who is wondering whether or not it's important to have a personal brand, what would you say to them?
So on this topic, I'm like, you're asking me this question a lot. Like, when I'm talking about personal branding, you're supposed to be like the personal branding queen in this equation. But you know what? I'll bite.
I want you to share with my audience. I feel like there's a different twist to it with everyone. You know,
Fair point.
see
Yeah.
consistency with how you post. I see you trying to build a community, and you know, it's how you've moved from just being a professional in your world versus the person that you are now. There's a lot of power in it. I am starting to tap into the power of personal branding. So please share with us, like, how do you think that has shaped your journey on one side? But if you could also share a tip or two with someone who was thinking, you know, I'd rather just be quiet and on the side of my table. I'd rather nobody knows me versus should I launch out my personal brand?
I know what. I would say that there's some caution. Whoever is being cautious, I can understand why, because putting yourself out there is scary. Let's be honest, when you start to post and people start to know who you are, there's also the good and the bad that comes with it. And the good is that there are opportunities that come with people knowing you. So lots of collaboration opportunities. This conversation is one of those things, right? Where once you start to be out there and people know who you are, more people want to hear your story, more people want you to come and share your experience and help others, right? So it's all good things. And I've also heard how when you have a positive brand out there, opportunities find you. So, for example, if you're somebody who used to apply for jobs and apply to roles, you start to find out that some of those jobs and roles find you, because one of the best ways that people can verify who you are, I think I posted about this once, that one of the reasons why people don't get the job is not because they are not the best person for the job technically, is that they don't know who they are. And many hiring managers will not hire you if they don't know you. And when I say if they don't know you, I'm not talking about whether you're their friend or family member. Is that they don't have any other way to verify that you can indeed do the things that you have said you can do. Now, one of the beauties of starting where you are is that because they already know you at that company, you can move into other roles. But what about that person who is outside of the organization? How do they verify who you are? One way is for somebody to refer you and say, oh, I know this person, I've worked with them, hire them. But it's not everybody who will have that opportunity to know somebody who will refer them. So how do they know who you are? It's your brand. They're just going to do a quick Google search on you and see what comes up. So what have you been posting online? And imagine if you have a strong brand that says you're an authority in this space. These are the things you've done. They don't really need to look further. You've already sold yourself because you have a brand that says, okay, this is Fisayo. She's a project manager and she knows what project management is about, right? So if I were to advise somebody who might still be on the fence and be like, I'm not sure, I'll say, look, for me, when I started sharing my story, I didn't plan, and still never my plan, to build 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers. There's nothing wrong with that. It comes with its perks, so it's good. But the thing is, I started sharing because I started sharing more frequently after I moved to Canada, and the experience I had where I said integrating into the new culture was difficult for me. It was quite a learning curve for me. And I was like, okay, if I can share a thing or two that can help somebody else who is going through a similar journey, then, I mean, both of us, we met through LinkedIn, right? It was through LinkedIn that we met. As an example, I was in that mind space to say, okay, anybody that reaches out to me, I'm going to listen to them, because in my experience, say nobody owes you anything, but the chances are that maybe 1 out of 10 people will respond to you. And so my goal was to be that one as much as possible, to be that one person that responds to you. So similarly, if you think, oh, what do I know? Well, if you've done something before, you can tell somebody else who wants to do that thing how you did it, and they will benefit from your experience. It's really that simple. If you've driven to a place before, you can tell somebody else that, oh, when you're driving to this place, these are the 4 potholes. Like yesterday, I was coming home and then I nicked my tire on a nail. Exactly. So now I can tell anybody who is going to drive that route, oh, watch out, there's a nail there. Maybe you should pass this other route. It's really that simple. I believe that one of the ways to make impact is to share. How will I call it? I'm losing the words I'm supposed to say here, but I want to say approach personal branding from the perspective of giving. What can I give? How can I make somebody's life better? How can I share something that will help somebody else not make the same mistakes that I have made? And then when you keep showing up doing that frequently, because daily is quite a commitment. So I'll say start small. Maybe post once a week. You can increase it to twice a week. When I first started posting on LinkedIn, I think I was posting as inspiration struck. I didn't even have a calendar or anything. If I had inspiration, I just post. It was just last year I told myself, okay, I'm going to do this more frequently. And one of the reasons why I did that was I was also exploring new things. And one of the things I was exploring was moving into a less permanent role into a contract role. And I know one of the big things about being able to attract contracts is people have to know who you are. And how would they know who you are? Like I mentioned before, one of the ways is how you are showing up online. So I would say if you're still on the fence, I hope that this is enough to convince you to just do the thing. Just start. You never know, right? And then if you find out that it's not for you, I think it's okay. But at least you never know until you start.
I wouldn't have put it any better than this. Like, there is so much power in personal branding. I look up to you in that sense. I know you think I'm, a pro, but every time I see Fisayo's post, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how does she do it? So yeah, like, well done.
I know what, it also helps you to learn new things. So just one more thing I wanted to add, along with my personal branding journey, has been learning how to use different tools. I used to see people use Canva and I was like, how do people use this thing? Well, I have learned now. And now I was still talking to you just before we started this conversation that I need to do something about my website and set it up. Now that's the next thing I know I need to address it this year. But you see, by the time you start to open doors of learning opportunities that you didn't even know was possible. And then the other thing
I know more software than I 6 months ago. Like,
exactly.
Because I'm constantly looking for a solution to help me do the next thing. So yeah, absolutely.
So that's the bonus. You learn so much as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Fisayo. This has been super, super packed. I would pay for an hour to listen to you and even more. So this has been so, so good. I have one last question, and I promise it's the very last one. What is that, like, just looking ahead, what's the impact? If you could describe in a few sentences, what is that impact that you're looking to leave behind in the project management field? Like, if we ever talk about Fisayo, when you decide to retire, I know it's still 20 years from now, but what is the one thing that you would love to leave as, an indelible mark of what you did in the field?
That's a good one. I think that, so I'll look at it from a perspective of, because like I said, I'm a problem solver. So if I see that there's a problem somewhere, I'd rather look for a way to find a solution to it. Let's put it that way. So when I started out in project management, I'm not lie, I thought it was boring. I thought, why do I have to read this 1,000+ page book to understand project management? It just seemed so tedious. But then again, as I got more into it, I understood that the knowledge is important. Let's not lie, it is important, but you're really in the people business. And so it's about managing people and then applying all of this foundational knowledge to make sure that you're managing people in a way that makes their lives easier and you help them get things done, right? That's how I see it. So if I had to say in a nutshell what I would like to leave behind, I want to be that person who just simplifies project management for you, makes see, it's as easy as what you do every day. But I'm not oversimplifying it at the same time. Because there's work. You have to put in the work. Not like you're just going to say, I want to be a project manager. No, it doesn't work that way. I want to be that person who, when I look back, I'm like, okay, I'm able to simplify project management and make people find an easy path or a simple path to follow to get to realize their project management dreams.
Such a huge purpose that you are the light ahead and just continue to shine that light for someone else to be able to step into those shoes. Fisayo, this has been, and I kid you not, it's been powerful, it's been inspiring, it's been, like, I've personally learned a lot, and I know we chat every now and again, but like, I have taken so much in today. And I can imagine that everyone who gets to watch or listen to this at some point will share the same sentiment. I just to say personally, thank you. Thank you for gracing us with your time. Thank you for sharing so much insight. Thank you for sharing wisdom. Like, if I were pivoting, and at some point I was asking myself, I do have a project management certification somewhere. And I'm like, should I just take Fisayo's advice and get into project management?
You never know. You never know.
So it's been like so much to learn, and I wanted to say personally, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. I see that you have a heart for people. I see what you do. Like, just shouting out there again. If you don't follow Fisayo on LinkedIn, I don't know what you're doing. Like, Fisayo Folarin posts, I don't know how she consistently puts out really good content there. So I would say, follow Fisayo. She has a coaching program as well. Explore that. She's got good stuff. I don't need to tell you. You've listened to her. She's got good stuff to share. And I just wanted to say, if you've enjoyed this episode of Career Conversations with Ola, you know what? There's more coming your way on YouTube. We're Career Zone by Ola. Follow Career Zone by Ola on YouTube. I intend to put this on Spotify at some point and some podcast channel. So follow, listen, subscribe, share with anyone you think this might be useful for. There is more coming your way. I have personally enjoyed this, Fisayo. Maybe we'll have a part 2 in the future. Like, who knows? So maybe we'll have a part 2 because I feel like there's so much that anyone will take away from listening to a conversation like this. So I wanted to just say thank you for gracing us with your time. See you again on the next episode, but please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and just keep putting the word out. It's Career Conversations by Ola. Career Zone by Ola is the channel. We hope to do more. I have personally learned that for me, from a place of purpose, listening to other people and learning from the lessons of other people can just be the ladder that someone else needs to get to where they should be. The whole idea is that we all succeed together. I always say the sky is big enough that we all succeed together, that we thrive. And so I hope that you continue to be the best version of yourself, show up as yourself, continue to pursue your dreams, and the sky, they say, would be your starting point. Thank you so much and see you on the next one.